And just like that, we are back. Let's start our discussion with the most important topic of 5th November 2024, which is also the most important topic of 2024. And who knows, this might even turn out to be the most important topic of this entire century, which is, of course, the elections in the United States, which have right now begun in all earnest. Many states have begun voting, and many others will, and the remaining will start in a couple of hours. So we have Donald J. Trump pitted against Kamala Devi Harris, and surprisingly, we don't have a clear idea of who is going to win when the results are announced, and we don't even have an idea about when exactly will we know who is going to win, simply because the opinion polls are suggesting it's a cliffhanger. It's as close as it has probably ever got. Maybe the last time it was this close was in the year 2000, when Al Gore lost to by a really slim margin and after a complicated legal case. But right now, it is about who is going to defeat history. Why do I say defeating history and not making history? Because Donald Trump has to reverse 130 years of history. The last time any person became the president of America after losing a re-election bid was way back in the year 1893. It was Grover Cleveland who lost his re-election bid in 1889. It was simply, an opposition to some tax reforms that he had suggested, tax and tariff reforms, which did not fly well even with his own constituents. He was a Democrat. So he lost the elections, but his successor mismanaged the economy, and then the same plans which did not work earlier actually became viable when he again stood for re-election. But in the last 130 years, nobody else, four people have tried, but nobody has been able to repeat what Cleveland did in 1893. Donald Trump wants to be the second person ever to win a re-election bid after losing a re-election bid. And of course, as we all know, Kamala Harris is defeating the entire history because there is no precedent to what she is trying to do, which is becoming the first woman president of America. Nobody has, no female has ever achieved this feat. And many feel that it's high time for the United States to have a female president. She has been careful enough in her entire campaign to not showcase herself as a female candidate, but only as a presidential candidate. We will see whether that has worked out or not. Now, why is this a cliffhanger? Now, if you follow the politics in America closely, you would know that ultimately it all comes down to the so-called swing states. So there are 7 swing states this time around. By swing states, we simply mean the states where the margin of victory in the last election season was really thin, maybe by a couple of maximum by 1 2 percentage points, which means that those seats can be flipped, those states can be flipped. Now, if we look at and as all and both these candidates, as has been the trend in the US elections over the last many decades, have focused mostly on these swing states in the last couple of months. What you're seeing on the screen is the latest as of today. What are these polls suggesting? You see, you'll find many of these dots in favor of Trump, but all of them are within the margin of error. So it is widely accepted that the margin of error in any opinion poll is plus minus 3%. As you see, none of them actually have been able to declare it in favor of either of these candidates by more than plus minus 3%, which means that all of them could go wrong. Now, this means that we this actually means that all these swing states are exactly that. We cannot really predict what's going to happen there. This could not have been scripted better even by the best writers of Hollywood. And maybe in a few hours we will know how it's exactly turning out to be. Now let's quickly discuss. I mean, a lot has been said and written about what Donald Trump has been doing, what he stands for, and what Kamala Harris has been doing and has stands for. This time around, we are just asking what is going for Donald Trump, what's working for him. Now, the first aspect, which is understood in the U.S. economy and the country at large, it's the economy. It's the economy, silly. This was the slogan of a really famous presidential campaign years ago. Now, inflation, although now it's somewhat under control, but inflation was rising, which mean which means of course the cost of living is higher, and this means that whoever is the incumbent is at a disadvantage to begin with. So since the many households have experienced financial pressure, which they hadn't, really felt earlier, for whatever reason, they will vent it out. I mean, the theory goes that they will vent it out on the establishment. Now, what's also working, and this is kind of counterintuitive, in favor of Donald Trump is that he is not the president right now. So he doesn't have to really defend what is going wrong in America, which he had to do when he ran for re-election in 2020. But now it's not on him. While Kamala Harris is the vice president. Now, throughout her campaign, Harris has been trying to show herself as quite distinct from President Joe Biden. I mean, any question about Joe Biden, and she responds immediately with, first of all, I'm not Joe Biden. But she still is the vice president of the United States, and she's a part of the Biden administration. So whatever has been wrong in the administration is kind of onto her. How successful she has been in decoupling herself from Joe Biden, we will see in the results. Now, what is of fundamental importance here is Donald Trump is again back to being the Donald Trump of 2015, 2016, which is, he's an outsider. He's an outsider fighting against the establishment. So this might work in his favor. Trump, if Trump being Trump, he has been sticking to the core themes that appeal to his loyal supporters, which is, of course, I am great for the economy, and the national security is being compromised, and for that he blames the illegal aliens or illegal immigrants, and nobody even knows how he defines those terms, and conservative social values, which he uses to appeal to the Catholic voter base. And that is why he has, with a heavy heart. I mean, I don't think personally Trump is a supporter on bans, on the various bans on abortion that many Republican states have implemented. But he understands that this is what his loyal supporters want, and this is what he gives to them. Now, the silent majority is with Trump. The silent majority is what is believed to have helped Donald Trump win the presidential elections in 2016. By silent majority, we simply mean, in this context, we mean the working class and middle class Americans, mostly, we have to say, white Americans, who feel that their voice is not being heard, they are being represented, their complaints are not raised by the media, and therefore they are easily impressed by what Trump has been constantly saying, that this media, they don't represent us, the common people, and all that. So broadly, these four themes are going in favor of Donald Trump. I found this accidentally. This was an email sent to a major news publication which they had published. I stumbled on it, and this kind of represents who is the real Donald Trump supporter. So this person here says that I want peace in the USA and peace in the world. So he's kind of annoyed that I'm not a violent person, which is what is usually alleged. I want to live in a safe environment, mostly crime free, without illegal aliens. So he has been influenced by whatever Trump has been saying about immigrants. And then he talks about the economy. I want to be able to afford food, housing, utilities, and healthcare. And then he says, I do not want to hear elections with trash calling and lying, such as the Democrats saying that no, President Trump is involved in the 2025 project. The 2025 project is actually something which Trump largely has disassociated with. It has, it's let's leave it at that. I mean, it has some flamboyant and absurd ideas about how to reshape America. But anyway, what he says is, I don't believe that Donald Trump is doing anything to destroy the American value systems. And then he says, about abortions, he says, I do not believe in abortion after you hear the baby's heartbeat, except for medical reasons. And he says, again, I am the silent majority and I voted for Donald Trump. So this is the typical Trump voter. And there are, of course, millions and millions of them. Now let's see what's going for Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris, you know, while the previous slide, of course, it was written by a man, Kamala Harris apparently has the support of the majority of women in the US. And some polls actually have, recent polls have said that she holds a double digit advantage, more than 10 percentage points advantage with women voters. And that is largely due to the issue of abortion rights, because she has said that she is going to restore the abortion rights that were taken away from the women of America, because the Supreme Court in 2022 struck down the landmark Joe versus Wade case that had provided such rights to the women of the United States. What the Supreme Court actually said was that now it will be left up to the states to decide what they want to do regarding it. So that blanket protection, the umbrella protection provided to the women for abortion was taken away by that. Now, Kamala Harris has been saying that she will restore it. The counter question that immediately comes is that she was actually a part of the administration, so why didn't she take steps to make that happen? Now, we have to understand quickly here that the Supreme Court of the United States is highly politicized. I mean, why was this overturned? Simply because Donald Trump, during his previous administration, had appointed a few judges who were conservative. So their values were clear that they are anti-abortion. So when this hearing came up, this happened. Now the second point here is Kamala Harris is, so she walks the middle ground. She is a moderate Democrat, which means although the Trump campaign keeps calling her a communist, but she is not. No, she's not like many others, many young leaders, Democrat leaders who actually are vocally socialist and communist. And she comes with a diverse background. Of course, she is. Her mother was an Indian woman, and her father was black. She calls herself, largely in her campaign, she refers to her as black, and privately she takes pride in being an Indian. She calls herself black simply because politically that is more conducive to her progress, and initially she used that in her career to progress, to climb the stairs. Now she has the credentials to be the president, and she's indeed presidential. If you have followed her career, she became the district attorney of San Francisco, then she became the attorney general of California, then she became a senator from the same state, and then she became the vice president. Now, if you extend this, you might say, president now. This is typically the path that the president of the United States is expected to follow. She has strong debating skills, and she has showed, even in the debate with Donald Trump, that she can remain calm under stressful situations. Also, I would say, yes, she keeps laughing a lot, which Trump keeps mocking a lot, but she has the ability to laugh at herself. If you haven't watched it, you should please go and watch the Saturday Night Live skit where she appeared along with the character who plays Kamala Harris. It actually showed her in good light. Anyway, and in that she said, keep Kamala and vote for Kamala. So that's what she wants the voters to understand. Now we can also say, counter argue that the silent majority is with Kamala. Now in this case, we redefine the silent majority as those Americans who are kind of fed up with this extreme rhetoric of Donald Trump, who is trying to incite divisions in the United States, who frequently keeps referring to America as the garbage can of the world. And maybe they don't say anything against it in public forums, but when the day comes, and these are all mostly white people whose idea of America does not align with the MAGA people, make America great again people. So if we see the points for Kamala Harris, if we see the points for Donald Trump, we do understand why we are looking at this thriller of an election where both the candidates have a lot of things going in their favor, and both of them have something going against them, which, by the way, Donald Trump's age goes against him. Kamala Harris' gender goes against her, I mean, historically speaking. Now, because it's so close, we might actually have a scenario of 269 to 269. I'm not going into the details of how the electoral college works in the US. Basically, every state has a certain number of electoral college votes assigned to it, and whoever wins the popular vote in that state takes those many votes. Out of 538, whoever gets 270 is the magic number, becomes the president of the United States. There are some configurations, combinations, which can even lead to a tie, which means 269 to Kamala Harris and 269 to Donald Trump. And in that case, we should not wish for such a scenario, because first of all, the stock markets around the world are going to tank. It will be such a massive amount of uncertainty that the economies of the world will kind of shake up. Not that it hasn't happened before, but the last time this tie happened was in the year 1800, and after that, certain amendments were made in the U.S. Constitution to reduce the probability of this. But I'm not too sure why none of those amendments actually increased the electoral college votes by one. Because if it was an odd number, this situation would actually never become even a theoretical possibility. However, if it is actually a tie on 6th January 2025, there will be a contingent election, and in that contingent election, it will be the Congress, the U.S. Congress, which will take the leading role. Every state will have one vote, depending on how many candidates they have sent to the Congress. And in the current setup, it will be the Republican Party prevailing, which means it's highly likely that Donald Trump will become the president if it's a tie. All the candidate needs to do, either of the two will need to do, is get 26 out of 50 states, and that is highly likely. And the Senate gets to decide who is the vice president, right? And in this case also, although it's kind of 50-50 right now in the Senate, but the configuration is expected to change in the favor of the Republicans in the upcoming election. If that happens, that it actually will be in favor of Donald Trump and JD Vance. Right, let's move on to the next topic. We will, of course, revisit the results of the US elections. It will be exciting. I hope it will be exciting. I also don't hope it will be so exciting that there is some lingering uncertainty for many days and weeks. Now, the next topic is the floods in Spain. What you see on the screen is the reaction of the King of Spain, King Felipe VI, after he was pelted with mud when he visited the region of Valencia. Now, it's not every day that you see a king and queen, and I mean his wife, Queen Laetitia, anywhere in the world, the royals getting the mud treatment, or literally mudslinging happening at them. So why is it that people in Spain, at least in these regions which were affected by the flood, are so upset with the establishment that they actually chased them away when they visited? So the king, the queen, the prime minister, and many top leaders in the establishment were visiting the flood affected regions, but the people just didn't want to see them. The prime minister's car's windows shields were shattered, as a result of stone and mud pelting. Two bodyguards actually became injured as a result of this. I mean, and hats off to the king for actually still, carrying on with meeting the people there, and that showed him in good light. Although it again focused global attention on the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Spain could have prevented the loss of more than 200 lives in the floods. This is, I believe, this is the most iconic image that has emerged from the Spanish floods. This also shows the power of water when it moves from upstream to downstream. Spain has still been mourning the disaster, and by the way, it's still raining in Spain, in many regions of Spain. In Barcelona too, it's raining right now. So the waters have largely receded from the flood affected regions. The mud is still there. In fact, the same mud was thrown at the king. So the question, but there are many questions which continue to be asked, and it's right to ask such questions, because not only Spain but other countries of the world can also be better prepared as a result of what we have observed and learned from during the Spanish floods of 2024. Now, 3 days of mourning have been completed. This were the official mourning period. This is the worst natural disaster to have hit Spain in recent history. So we don't. Now, why is it that 200 lives being lost is such a big deal there? Because that doesn't happen in Spain. It's also a wake-up call to Europe, which for some reason has assumed that extreme weather events, even when they happen, will not be deadly. So other countries are also interested in Europe at least, are interested in knowing how can they be better prepared. So eastern and southeastern Spain on the 29th October were hit with torrential rainfall and storms, which led to this catastrophic damage across the region. Now, some of the localities, especially in Valencia, received 1 year's worth of rainfall just within 8 hours. This is almost like the Mumbai deluge. Now, this resulted in severe flooding, which swept away bridges and buildings, and the social media was full of scary images and videos from these floodings, mostly showing cars being swept off in the waters. Now, why is it that this storm could not have been foreseen? Of course, now this is also an iconic image. This is people from around the region, the neighboring regions of Valencia, coming with their shovels and all the support and equipment that they could gather to remove the mud and find survivors and dead bodies from the affected regions. So the flood of people trying to mitigate the damages done by the floods. Now, what are the questions here? Spain has previously seen many winter storms, but it had never seen a storm leading to rainfall as deadly as this. What could have been done better? Now, first and foremost, the government failed to communicate this properly. So it's a failure of communication here, and that makes the people really angry. Why is it that 12 hours were passed between the time the meteorological agency of the region issued red alert and when the regional government sent warning SMSs to all the residents of the area? 12 hours. And these 12 hours made all the difference. Imagine, you knowing about incoming floodwaters 5 hours sooner, you could have done a lot with it. By the way, many of the people lost their lives in the localities which actually had not seen any rainfall, because the rainfall happened upstream. There were two river systems which got flooded, and then the waters overflew, came from top to bottom. But these people were happily, playing football, roaming around on the streets, going about their daily lives, and they were simply swept away. Had there been any prior warning, they would have, of course, rushed to an elevated locality, or even on the second, third floors of wherever they could, to save their lives. So the thing is, it was on 25th October that one leading meteorologist had warned that the upcoming cold drop. Now, cold drop is simply a term used in Spain and also sometimes in France to describe heavy rains during winter season. So he said that it's highly likely that this will be a high impact storm, and he had posted it on his Twitter. Some people mocked him that by saying that you are just trying to be sensationalist here. Nothing of this sort actually happens in Spain, and many climate change denialists actually ridiculed him. Now he's being seen as somebody who can offer a lot of insights into what went wrong. So there is absolutely no way any government, after looking at what happened in Spain, can downplay the warnings issued by the meteorological agency of their region, or maybe even a top meteorologist who works on data. I mean, whose job is to work on the data 24/7, and that it happened is unforgivable, because Spain last year had initiated this warning system just to prevent such a scenario. But what actually happened was, in the first instance this was used, it was in Madrid last year, the storms actually did not come. And therefore, many people mocked the government on social media, and maybe this played on the minds of the government to actually downplay this. And maybe simply because, again, historically, such storms and such heavy rainfall did not happen in Spain. So maybe they just ignored this. And that is why we have to be we have to abide by what science says, and we have to deploy, not just deploy, but also promptly use the communication channels when we are faced with an extreme weather event. So so what actually happened was, many people rushed to the basement when they heard that there's a possibility of flood happening. They rushed to the basements to take their cars outside, and the waters came rushing almost immediately, and these people got trapped there. Not just trapped there, they were then taken to the streets. The roads became rivers, and they were hundreds of them are yet to be found, which means that the real death toll actually would be more than 500 when the final count is done. So what is happening right now? I mean, the lesson is that climate change is supercharging storms. I will quickly talk about two reasons why we believe it is climate change at work. Now, first of all, warmer air holds more moisture, and the Mediterranean Sea, which of course is which surrounds the regions impacted by these floods, it recently had its warmest surface temperature on record, 28.47 degrees Celsius. So it's not accidental, or it's just not a coincidence that this storm happens just a couple of months after the Mediterranean Sea records its warmest surface temperature. And more moisture would mean heavier rainfall when it happens. Also, many experts believe that we might be seeing significant changes in the global jet stream. Now, what is jet stream? The phenomenon, the movement of air mass above, thousands of feet above in the atmosphere, that is responsible for changes in weather systems across the world. If it is changing, then we have to prepare for extreme weathers actually becoming quite routine in the coming years and decades. Also, and this is surprising to many people, that the same region which is now flooded actually had been impacted by a massive drought in the previous 2 years. And that complicated matters, that caused more damage, that actually compounded the damage, because the vegetation cover was reduced due to the drought, and the rushing waters did not face any major resistance. Because of that, they did not slow down, and that's why they came at such a heavy speed. So the bottom line is that not just Spain, but every country, every government around the world has to prepare for more droughts and more floods becoming a routine part of their annual calendar, because that is the reality of climate change that we have to live with. I guess this is all we have in this session. I will see you again shortly when we will see who is the next president of the United States. Thank you. Keep watching.